Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So the only way to describe this week is a mess, and not a particularly good one either. And yes, I know some of this I could predict. I knew that Gunna, Lil Pump, and Offset would hit the charts with some force, but they honestly didn't seem to register the larger impact that I was expecting. And we got a flood of other singles that hit the charts as well from other genres. Now, whether any of it will last, that's an open question. We'll have to see, but honestly, I'd be mostly fine with most of this going away. But really, that's not the big story this week, because that comes with a number one I did not see coming at all, leaping up about 20 slots thanks to a well-deserved Oscar win, Shallow by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper at number one. And keep in mind, the only reason it surged this much was a margins game. The sales were huge, sure, but it also had groundswell on streaming and YouTube, and just enough residual radio to seize the number one. Now, it will not last. Sales boosts like this fall off, and I've got every expectation that Seven Rings by Ariana Grande will rebound from number two next week. The streaming is monstrous, the radio gains are still solid, and the sales are still quite credible. But all this is not particularly good news for Without Me by Halsey down at number three. Sure, it finally snagged the top spot on the radio, but with streaming stalling out and sales being down, it's a peak I do not see lasting. Hell, I would put money on Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee driving up beyond number four, but despite good streaming, the radio is slipping, which is not a good sign going forward. What might have more of a shot is Middle Child by J. Cole rebounding in a big way to re-enter the top 10 at number 5, mostly thanks to the video, but the lack of serious radio traction and weak sales looks like it's going to hold it back from getting that much higher. Now, it did break past Happier by Marshmello and Bastille, which is still at number 6, because even though it's losing in all categories, it's got just enough radio inertia to hold onto its spot a little longer. Hell, it held up over Thank You Next by Ariana Grande at number 7, which is just bleeding in every category, especially radio and sales. Now this takes us to Wow by Post Malone rising up to number 8, and I gotta say, I'm a little bit surprised it caught a good week on the radio and streaming to take it there. I don't really see consistent traction for it, look at the past 2 months for evidence of that, but you can hope, right? Then we've got our next new arrival into the top 10, Tatiana by Blueface at number 9. And again, I don't think this is precisely bad, but I will say I'm surprised how much traction it has on sales and streaming, mostly off of the endless stream of remixes, but without radio, I don't expect it to last. And on that subject, it looks like Sicko Mo by Travis Scott might be finally on its way out at number 10, as it also is bleeding in all categories. Even though I'm not really a fan of it, it happens. It really lasted longer than I expected. Now, where things continue to get eventful come in our losers and dropouts, and there were definitely some surprises in the latter category. Yeah, I kind of expected Arms Around You by XXXTentacion, Lil Pump, Maluma, and Sway Lee to leave, and take Good Girl by Dustin Lynch, Pure Cocaine by Lil Baby, Yosemite by Travis Scott, and sadly, When the Party's Over by Billie Eilish with it. But I also admit it's a bit of a surprise that we got dropouts for 16 by Thomas Rhett, and Lost in the Fire by The Weeknd and Gesaffelstein. Then we got our losers, and let's go through the expected ones for Ariana Grande first. Needy fell to 60, Nassau went to 68, Imagine slid to 85, Bad Idea went to 90, and Bloodline dripped down to 93. Beyond that, well, most of them seem like songs that never caught fire properly in the first place, with some like This Feeling by the Chainsmokers and Kelsey Ballerini at 77, Calling My Spirit by Kodak Black at 83, and sadly, Nothing Breaks Like a Heart by Mark Ronson featuring Miley Cyrus going to 84. They did have plenty of time, and others like Love Someone by Lucas Graham at 89, or Put a Date on It by Yo Gotti and Lil Baby at 96. These ones just not getting much and just kind of flopping. Or in the case of Talk You Out of It by Florida Georgia Line going to 98, nobody really wanting to give this the time of day, for good reason. But where the story gets kind of interesting comes in our returning entries and gains, and let's start off with the first group. I mean, sure, One Call by Gunna came back at 78 because of the album, along with Secreto by Annual AA and Carol G at 92, because apparently we didn't have enough boring reggaeton in our lives right now. But thanks to the groundswell of Shallow and A Star Is Born, we also saw big returns for Always Remember Us This Way at 47, and I'll Never Love Again at 62, both by Lady Gaga. And while I've already talked about Shallow, we did have a few other gains, and it's a shame that a fair few of them suck. Nashville Radio. Nobody likes Jordan Davis or Take It From Me. You tried this push a couple years ago in the same way, and it's the only reason it is up at 46. Nobody wants this guy. Get rid of him. And on that topic, we also saw a small push for Who Do You Love by the Chainsmokers featuring 5 Seconds of Summer up to 66, and Close Friends by Lil Baby rebounding to 53. Joy. Now, thankfully, some of the other gains are tolerable. Con Calma by Daddy Yankee featuring Snow got a big boost to 59 out of nowhere. Burnout by Midland saw a mild boost to 69. And to my surprise, Worth It by YK Osiris got a healthy boost to 73. Again, it's kind of a surprisingly good song. I'm happy to see this guy get traction. But where the story gets a lot bigger is our hefty list of new arrivals, starting off with number 100, Faucet Failure by Ski Mask the Slump God.
I am Faucet Failure, my nigga, I got drip. Ashing on your bitch, this that Pokemon trainer shit.
So I'll say it, it's a little weird to see Ski Mask the Slump God slip a song in this week, especially one that I could have sworn was charting weeks earlier, but turns out I was just remembering the Canadian charts. But honestly, I'm not surprised that this has been the Ski Mask song that's actually had some legs, especially in the wake of Blueface's more wonky delivery and subsequent success. And honestly, I would easily take this over Thotiana. Ski Mask the Slump God's got the sort of wordplay and weird sense of humor that I honestly wish a lot more hip-hop and trap would embrace. And the fact that as many references as he has actually managed to connect together speaks a lot of his talent. Especially when you break this song down, it's not much different than your regular flex track. Except his second verse is all about getting fast food, and it's sold just as well. And while you could definitely say that he's on a pretty conventional trap beat for most of the song, when the bass beat picks up the tempo against the rattling touches, you get a much more off-kilter vibe that really works with Ski Mask the Slump God's way of bending syllables that's actually really infectious. In other words, yeah, it's kind of goofy, and to me it feels a little bit short. I really miss third verses. But you know what? I actually really like this. And I'm sure as I'll take this over something like, I don't know, number 97, Same Young N-Word by Gunna featuring Playboi Carti. Look, the only reason this is charting is because Gunna brought Playboi Carti on board to add some personality and content. In other words, the situation is dire indeed. But can we talk about how muddy that faint, wiry synth is, blended with the beat and the autotune slathered over everything, and how Playboi Carti sounds like he's half asleep with any ad-libs just falling into a pile-up? And when you factor in with the utterly forgettable delivery and the brand name porn content from both of them, yeah, there's nothing to care about here. And I can't even imagine those people who came just for Playboi Carti being happy with this. So, next, number 95, Good As You by Kane Brown.
But baby, I just wanna be good as you.
So, in the face of the country acts trying to rip him off, I tried to give Kane Brown a little bit of credit last week, but I knew that wouldn't really last as soon as he dropped another single, and here we are. That being said, this is not bad by any means. Opting for more of a mid-tempo country soul vibe that might start very staccato off the live snares, but eventually builds up a more burnished groove and vibe courtesy of the guitars and organ, helped along by some actual live drums. I guess maybe someone at Nashville Radio wanted to slide someone smoother into Chris Stapleton's lane now that he's holding steady on the charts, but the banjo here feels a little bit too clunky to fit well in with it. And that's before we get to the content, which is a very basic love song where Kane Brown prostrates himself before this girl and says that he can never be as good as her. And look, I know, I appreciate humility, but this is a trend in mainstream country as of late of constructing artificial pedestals for women without really showing much humanity for them, and also not playing them on the radio. We can see through that. Still, if we're just looking at this Kane Brown song on its own, it's fine enough. I'm not going to complain about it, but I've also seen a lot more done with these grooves, so I'll stick with those. Number 94, I Guess I Just Feel Like by John Mayer.
I guess I just feel like.
Am I the only one who thinks this just came out of nowhere? Apparently John Mayer first performed this song last October and only now is pushing it as a single. And look, my big issue with John Mayer is that he's always been a much better guitarist than either singer or songwriter. And as much as he's tried to showcase a lot of authenticity in his presentation, especially in the 2000s, I just never bought into it. That said, I think my hatred of this guy has been oversold in some places, and so with this, look, I can see the appeal, I just kinda can't get behind it. For one, this sort of wistful, contemplative folk song maybe shouldn't have been given interludes that are all windswept and huge and full of falsetto cooing, and that's not even getting into the higher register he tries in the final verse that doesn't really work. But even when you get into the choice of his guitar tones, it just feels kind of off. The first solo feels too distant, a closing solo is trying to bring in some squealing, bluesy smolder, and it doesn't fit with anything, especially the content. And as for the lyrics, well, they kind of fit the production in that they're trying to be vulnerable, but they're just kind of a misstep, with thin platitudes about hitting a low point amidst vague assertions that love is all we need. It's just kind of thin and plaintive, not expressive enough to be truly vulnerable in a way that cuts any deeper, and lacking a deeper core to elevate any of this. But overall, look, John Mayer's time in the spotlight is long gone. I can't really care about this. It's passable for its audience. Let's just keep moving on. Number 91, Speed It Up by Gunna.
Eat it up. Eat it up. Eat it up. Speed it up. Speed it up.
Okay, let's live up to the title. The dreamy touches around the melody, they're tolerable, but the choppy flow Gunna brings to the table adds nothing. A bunch of disconnected brands structured like hashtag rap, but with no punchline. It might sound a little bit clearer than what he did with Playboi Carti, but it's just as lazy and forgettable, and would likely be album filler on any better trap album. In other words, next. Number 87, Girls Need Love by Summer Walker and Drake.
Girls can't never say they need it. Girls can't never say nah.
Okay, here's a bit of background. Summer Walker originally released Girls Need Love way back in the summer of 2018, and for the whole indie R&B crowd, it did pretty well. And in Drake's classic approach of hopping on the songs of the women in R&B he wants to nail, wants to help with their careers, we get the obvious collaboration here on the remix. Now, to his credit, he's actually singing more in the song than actually rapping, which is probably better for the murky synth work and the low-key trap vibe. But it's such an obvious move coming from Drake, especially on a song where Summer Walker is speaking from the perspective of women who want sex and pleasure but are inhibited by society from expressing for it or asking for it. And Drake is just happy to fill that role, I guess. Now granted, his references to domination and submission have the clunkiness of somebody who is just not at all into that scene, but I am kind of amused he tried. Otherwise, I'll be honest, Summer Walker isn't really blowing me away in her vocals or songwriting, and there's no shortage of R&B songs like this just adjacent to the mainstream. I don't know, it's pretty good. I guess I'll take it. Number 86, Lick by Offset.
I gotta survive, pay the rent. I was so broke that I could cry, I was sick. Born in the wild, so many trials, I ain't quit.
So I'm a little bit surprised that Offset only broke 4 songs into the Hot 100 this week. Just for all your reference, Gunna has 5. And I'll admit seeing one of them called Lick did concern me, but it honestly just suffers from some of the same problems I had with The Red Room. Offset sounds more disengaged than he should, the watery flute production doesn't really flatter his voice, and while there's more momentum to this trap groove, and I like his flow, I'm still not really wowed by the content. Part of this is that the hook feels just as long with every verse. Part of it is that Offset's story is not all that compelling or unique from song to song, and partially when he tacks on attempts at social commentary, they just feel like one more scattered topic in between all the gunplay and flexing, and that just kind of doesn't really fit all that well. I mean, it's not a bad song by any stretch, but even on his own, Offset's made better. Number 75, Wit It by Gunna. Okay, what's with the production layering on these songs? I swear the snare is louder than the muddy vocal pickup, and even if nothing Gunna is saying is remotely interesting, it'd be nice to actually hear him. Yeah, there's a smooth, watery vibe in the production, but the flexing lacks any sort of flavor or spark. You could substitute Gunna's content out with any other song, and I would put money at nobody could tell the difference. Again, it's not the worst he's put out this week, but it's not good either. Number 74, Three-Headed Snake by Gunna featuring Young Thug. So for many of the rest of the trap songs remaining this week, we got lead artists who will likely wind up getting shown up by more interesting guests. And let's start with the most obvious. Because why in the nine hells Gunna thought it was a good idea to get Young Thug here is beyond me. Because even if I had argued there has been a steep drop-off in quality from Thugger in recent years, he's at least trying harder than this. And look, I can respect the idea of going bar for bar with your mentor, just trading things off. But what this proves is that Gunna is such a pale facsimile of Young Thug in terms of the flair of his writing and especially delivery, that even if you try and cheat and lower Young Thug's volume in the mix like they do in this song, you still come up kind of like a wannabe. Now granted, Young Thug is still going to drop homophobic slurs about all the lesbians he's going to screw, and his content has never been that interesting. But hey, for as boring as the production is, kind of makes sense, I guess. Say, Pusha T, didn't you say on the story of Adidon that we had to chop the heads off these snakes? Can we get on with that? Number 72, Be Like Me by Lil Pump featuring Lil Wayne.
Everybody wanna be like me. Bust down big chains and dress fancy.
So if you're looking at pure sales, streaming, and reviews, Lil Pump had a bad week. And it seems like something has happened time and time again to upstarts like him. The label grabs his sound from the underground and eats him alive. Or in this case, puts him opposite Lil Wayne, who is still on his creative rebirth, which might be the worst possible thing for Lil Pump. Now, keep in mind that Lil Pump is far from interesting or compelling or likable as it is. The flat discord and synths don't help, but the hook is about as repetitive as it gets. And then we have Lil Pump bragging about his ignorance, all of his drug abuse, how he keeps his side girl on a leash, and how he's such a role model for the kids. Fun stuff. And well, I would hope that Lil Wayne would step up here with a good verse. Honestly, it's not that good. Mostly because for as better of a rapper as he is in comparison with Lil Pump, he's still trying to give Lil Pump equal stage, and you can tell that he's just not trying as hard. And wait a minute, on the Carter 5, I thought you were trying to celebrate your impact on the game and the people who are imitating you, because this is absolutely not that. In other words, no, it's not terrible, but it's pretty far from good. Next, number 70, Outstanding by Gunna.
I'm on the drink, got this hill. I'm done with Zanny. I bought my mama a crib. I'm outstanding. I'm pressing my cousin a pill till it's granted.
Can I just say I don't care and walk away? Seriously, we're dealing with a limp, muddy vocal pickup, murky keys, another cheap-sounding trap beat, and Gunna rattling through forgettable brand name flexing and taking your girl whenever he wants as his Jewish lawyer handles the cases. And once again, nothing he says or how he says it makes him distinctive or compelling or interesting, except maybe for as badly as his ad-libs sound here. In other words, I still don't care about this guy. Next, number 65, How Would I Get Here by Offset featuring J. Cole.
Walk around with a Smithfield. I'm from the south, had a go grill. Remember doing shows in Mobile.
So I'll admit I was kind of shocked to see Offset let a J. Cole verse get onto this album. Mostly because in the past couple months, J. Cole's racking up a reputation for thoroughly grabbing hold of any song he's on and showing everybody up. You would think for a solo debut, you wouldn't want that. Now granted, I think this might be better overall, even if I think that Offset's hook is a little awkward and Offset can still barely construct a coherent topic in his verse. The seeds of the come-up story do have a little bit more structure, as well as the ghosts that seems like they are perpetually haunting him on this album. And much to my surprise, I'm not sure J. Cole delivers a powerful verse here. He sets a powerful scene in the first couple bars, but his flow is a little bit slower, and the payoff feels kind of limp, especially compared to what he delivered for JID or 21 Savage. Coupled with production that does not really stand out that much, a persistent weakness with J. Cole, again, it's okay, but both acts have delivered a lot more. Number 64, Clout by Offset featuring Cardi B.
They do anything for clout. Do anything for clout.
So I'll admit I was probably most curious about this. Frankly, I'm amazed that Cardi B seems like she's taken Offset back, but here they are working together on one of the bigger debuts, and I don't know, folks. I'm not quite sure I'm feeling this either. For one, trying to bash people for doing things for clout, and then shouting out both Kim and Kanye seems like a bit of obvious hypocrisy. And for as much as the gossip mongers spread rumors about these guys, I'm really tired of rappers calling the media fake, especially when you know just how much they rely on social media to gain traction. That being said, I did mostly like the blurry piano keys behind them, and Cardi B really does steal the show here. Mostly because her bars are more focused and direct in calling out those people trying to use her, whereas Offset yet again remains more scattered. But I'll also say that Cardi B's verse doesn't end with as much punch as it should, as the references become more scattered and so do the bars. Again, I was curious about this, and I'm not sure it's great or even all that good, but it is passable, I guess. I'll take it. Number 54, Walk Me Home by Pink.
I can't be alone with all that's on my mind.
Folks, I'll admit I'm the guy who's probably given Pink way too many chances, and yet I'll admit going into this I had rock bottom expectations, but this is the lead-off single and it's actually good. And while there's a part of me that is just exuberant that's the case, I will say I will struggle to call this a great song. Yes, Pink is a fantastic singer with huge pipes and a raw presence I've always loved, and finally we got some electric guitars driving the hook, but I do feel the track is a little more reliant on the percussion than it probably should be, which I can probably point to co-writer Nate Ruiz of Fun for that, and it probably could afford to be a little bit faster overall, crank up the tempo. More to the point, the lyrics do feel a little thin, basically trying to play a similar situation to Avril Lavigne's I'm With You, but just not quite as distinct or heartfelt or intimate or desperate. Now granted, I was a little bit surprised how well the pitch-shifted vocal sample blended into the stomping groove, and while the acoustic guitar does feel kind of frail, it's at least here. And while I still prefer a little bit more sizzle to the song overall, it is a solid lead-off single, and has raised at least some of my hopes that the new album might bring back more of a rock side to Pink. You know what, let's only hope. And finally, number 49, Legacy by Offset featuring Travis Scott and 21 Savage.
You ever felt the zombie? Your body gon' smell like vomit.
You know, I had some hopes for this because I liked Without Warning with 21 Savage, and both he and Travis are making more interesting music nowadays. And thus it feels kind of weird how underwhelming Legacy is. Part of it is the cheap, whirring trap beat and the oily set of tones passing for a hook that seems to build into something more interesting and potent whenever Travis shows up, but never evolves or builds swell effectively off those bridges, which promise a lot more than they really deliver, especially when all the content is all the more empty flexing and unrealized paranoia. But if I'm gonna highlight a disappointment with the song, it's 21 Savage. With his lethargic flow, he just doesn't have the tightness to ride this sort of trap flow well, and you can tell that he's not really a natural fit for that cadence, especially on the second half of the verse where he keeps trying to get off of it. Now, granted, his flexing and lines are a little bit more creative than Offset's, which basically feel interchangeable at this point, but even then, it doesn't stand out all that much. Not bad, not great, but where's Metro Boomin when you need him, I swear. Anyway, that was this week. Entirely too long and not nearly memorable enough, but the best tracks do kind of stand out. And much to my surprise, my favorite is Faucet Failure by Ski Mask the Slump God. There's more personality in that one song than anything Gunna both delivered here and probably forever. With honorable mention going to Walk Me Home by Pink, because I don't trust that disappointment isn't right around the corner, but it is still good. Now for the worst, you know, I really want just to give it to Gunna as a whole, but I think I'm going to highlight Outstanding as the weakest for dishonorable mention, because worst the week is going to Lil Pump and Lil Wayne for Be Like Me, with the former proving just as bad as always, and the latter just not trying as hard as he really should have in order to save this song. Next week, well, it's kind of tough to say, because while it's possible we might get some impact from 2 Chainz, it's a lot more likely that impact's gonna come from the Jonas Brothers, so stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.